Hello, Ebony.
Hello.
Hi,
Hi.
how's it going?
It's good. How are you?
I'm very good, very good. That was a good start. 4 weeks in, and I seem to have started our live thing a little bit better. That's great. um, so I thought I'll just do a quick introduction for today. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Danielle, and I run Soda Arts, which is a curatorial consultancy in Sydney. So thanks for joining us for an art break. Hopefully you've just got a cup of tea or a coffee, and happy to just have a time out from your day while I chat to the wonderful Ebony, who's in her studio with beautiful work in her background. Yeah. So, Ebony, I'm going to explain a little bit about you and what you do. So, for anyone that doesn't know you, so you're an artist based in Sydney. You seem to be just taking off at the moment with prizes and awards. You recently announced that you're being represented by Arterial Gallery in Roselle. Congratulations, that's
Thank
great.
you. Yeah, I'm very happy about that.
Yes, and you've just had a show there, an online exhibition that people can look at that you can talk a little bit about in a moment. You're also working towards a solo show there later this year. What else? You're a very busy woman. You sell wearable objects on your website, so you have a really diverse practice of functional and non-functional objects. You are a sessional lecturer at the National Art School in the ceramics department, which for most people who would know the National Art School, I think everyone knows that the ceramics department at NAS is just phenomenal. It seems to constantly be producing all these amazing artists. So no surprises that you're from there. And you used to be an art teacher and you're a mum. So you're quite a busy person.
You make it sound like I'm really busy, but it's not that bad. It's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, why don't you, just to start off, why don't you tell us, where are you at the moment?
So I'm in my studio, which is at Killinit. It's in Glebe. It's I think I forgot my apron today, so I had to steal a Killinit apron. It's an experimental ceramics studio here in Glebe, and it's actually old nurses' quarters. So it's a pretty funky little building. So I'm just unplugging my phone. There we go. I was worried it wasn't going to be charged. So this is my studio, and out there are about another 9 studios, maybe 10. And there's a workshop. So we have lots of different people coming and going. Through COVID, we've had different restrictions about using the space, but because we're in our own little room, here's a full 360.
Amazing. Great camera work.
Yeah, thank you. Because we're in our own little room, I could still come here through our lockdown and our social isolating. But I have, like you said, I have 2 children. So I've been actually staying at home a lot more and working from home. But Wednesdays I teach here in the studio. I teach a lecture for NAS on Zoom. So I come in here so I can have a bit of peace and quiet. My husband stays home on Wednesday so I can work. And yeah, so Wednesday at the moment is like my big full studio day, which is great. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's where I am. I'm here.
How does teaching ceramics over Zoom go?
Well, NAS has been amazing. So this is the first year I taught at NAS. I finished my master's there last year, and I was very lucky to be asked to teach first year ceramics. Normally I'd teach a 6-week program that takes the students through the beginnings of working with clay. And NAS was amazing. Like, they just kind of said, okay, how are we going to do this? And everybody worked to create a program that could be taught online. And I thought what they did was great. They said, we're going to cover all of the history. So we don't know when we're going to get back to our practical sessions in the studio, but hopefully it's going to be semester 2. So let's just work on ticking off all of the theory. So my students have been working in their sketchbooks and looking at the history of hand building techniques and then contemporary artists. And they've designed their what they want to make. And that's been really good. And now it looks like we're going to be back in the studio. So, and I'm pretty sure they've done that across most subjects. So history, theory, tick. Let's get making. Yeah. Yeah. So it's been good.
Great.
It's been really good.
Yeah. And so perhaps you just want to talk a little bit about your background and how you ended up where you are today.
Yep. Okay. So I'm actually from Victoria, and I grew up in the Otways down past Geelong in a little town called Colac. And I've always loved art. Art was always something that I was drawn to from like an earliest age. And I think I started getting, like, teachers would always tell me, you know, that I was doing well in art. So it made me love it even more. You know, when you find your place and you go, oh, I do well here. And then being in the country, I was actually really lucky. I had quite a lot of ceramic artists around me. So I started doing a lot of work with clay in high school. And then I studied ceramics at Monash University when I finished high school. But I wanted to get a teaching degree behind me as well. So I attempted to do a master's, and I decided to defer, and I did my teaching degree when you could do it in 1 year, not in 2 years. So I got that done because I'd already been at uni. My dad kept reminding me I'd already been at uni for a really long time and needed a job.
Yeah.
So I became a teacher, and I've been a high school art teacher and primary school art teacher for the best part of the last 15 years. I had my daughters, you know, did all these other things, but I just taught. And I moved to Townsville for a few years actually, and then we moved here to Sydney. So I kind of moved around a bit with my family and my husband's career. And when we came to Sydney, I knew that Linda Draper was the head of NAS, ceramics at NAS, and I knew that Sandy Lockwood was there, and I'd always admired their work, and I just thought this is a good time for me to maybe try to go back to having a full-time art practice. So my daughters are in primary school now, and my husband has a good job here, and he needs me to support him. So I was like, I'll do my master's now, and that could mean that I could then lecture at uni instead of high school teaching and have this. So it's worked out. I've worked hard for it, but I got here, so it's good. Yeah.
Yes, it's definitely working out. So for those, and I will include some images of your work in this video later, but for those of you that don't know your work, it's this incredibly decorative. It has a very unique construction technique. Yes, you can see it in the background there.
There's lots of pieces. Lots of pieces in here.
It's like a treasure trove in there.
It is. It's like Ariel's grotto, you know.
Yes.
That's what I always think of. Yeah.
As a side note, do your kids have your work all over their bedroom? Are they in love with it, or are they just really indifferent? Like, oh, mum.
It's quite funny. When I was studying, they would come and see my studio, and then they'd be like, what are you going to do with this? And I'd say, oh, well, I'll sell it. I'll put it in an exhibition and I might sell it. And they'd be like, you're not going to sell it. Like, you can't sell it. And whenever I have an exhibition, like, I'll say to them, oh, mummy's got this exhibition, and I don't take them to the opening. I take them afterwards when I can enjoy it with them, because it's a bit crazy. And they get really angry at me. They're like, did you sell that? Like, where's that artwork? And yes, I've had to kind of explain to them. It's been a bit traumatic at times. They're like, but I liked that one. But yeah, I've made them some special pieces, and they actually make a lot of it themselves too. So they get there with the piping bag, and they won't let me help them. So, you know, they know what they're doing. Yeah.
And so what is the genesis of the piping technique? Where did it come from? Is it something that came about in your master's, or has it been with you for a long time? Because it's become, I haven't ever seen it done before, and I don't imagine that anyone could do it. It's completely owned by you. So, where did it come from?
Well, I mean, for me, it actually came from this. This is my little ballerina off my birthday cake from when I was a little girl. And I've also got my jewelry box with the ballerina inside, but definitely from this little lovely lady. I was very interested in these objects. When I was a child, I was obsessed with the Madonna. I went to a Catholic school. I have a Roman Catholic background on both sides. And for me, the nuns and the Madonna, I just saw them as so beautiful. And I think I focused on them a lot when I was stuck in church. I loved the sculptures. I loved all the iconography and the images that I would see in that really kitsch Giovanni kind of, you know, like I've got her over here on my wall. Like, it's just so rich and full of connections for me. And then all these objects, I was like, how do I put them into a world? And the ballerina sits on the cake and the icing is so rich and beautiful. And my Nana always had these cake decorating books. And you know, when you go to your grandparents and sometimes there's not much to do there, they always had figurines and they always had the cookbooks and fake flowers. So my Nana would give me fake flowers to plant in the garden in red scoria rock. And I would, it's kind of like imaginary worlds with all of these objects. So I was using the cake decorating back in 2004, but I just couldn't get it the way I wanted. And when I came to NAS 2.5 years ago, I just kind of picked it up from there. And I started just doing little test tiles with the technique. And that's where the icing took over, because I didn't want it to be about the objects as the central figure. I wanted to create the kind of imaginary worlds that I saw these objects playing in and living in. And that's kind of how it came about. Yeah.
Well, I mean, they're very nostalgic. Looking at these works, you're instantly transported to a time and a place, whatever that may be, maybe for an individual. And so what are you working on at the moment?
At the moment,
or anything in particular?
I'm working on a solo show for Arterial. So my solo, I was meant to be having a solo show with them in August, and obviously with galleries not being open, things got postponed. So they moved to an online platform, and I do have a side project called Pipe Dreams Studio, and I have another Instagram for that. And that's where I've been making functional objects of art. So pieces that are smaller, more with a purpose, and candle holders have come out of that. So Arterial had asked me to do some work for a pop-up show, which had a dinner, and I decorated a dinner table as though it was from Great Expectations. What's her name? The beautiful old lady in her wedding gown, Miss Havisham. Miss Havisham. So I really wanted to, I love Miss Havisham's like wedding cake on her table that's just falling apart, and like the presence of that loss of that like promise of a happy life for her. And I think that fits really well with the icing and this kind of world that I make. So I made some candle holders, and that's come out of that. And Arterial said, well, let's give you a show about your functional work. I'd recently had a show at Modern Times called Transcendence, where it was a group show, and they'd asked me to make objects, functional objects as well. So at the moment, I'm moving forward with the solo show that will happen sometime in the future that's more about my sculptural practice. And I've got some ones for Melbourne. There's another show that I'm going to have at Modern Times in Melbourne in July. So these are some candle holders and flower vases, well, bud holding things, I don't know, stuff that I'm working on. And then over here, I'm working on a grotto that is a collaboration with an artist in Melbourne. Her name's Louise Mewison, and she does some really beautiful beading work and textile work and sculptural wearable art. And she's going to be beading a big fleshy tongue to go in here. And this is going to have a big grotto over the top. So that's what I'm working on at the moment. Yeah.
Fantastic. And will that piece be in the Arterial show?
No, the piece that I'm working on in collaboration with Louise, we're looking to find something to put that in. we have a bit of a love affair with each other's work. We're both really into the decorative and the elaborate and the over the top. And we've just been talking about it for ages, wanting to put something together. Yeah.
Great.
And ISO gave us the opportunity.
Yeah. ISO. Good. Yeah. So bad, but so good in some ways.
Yeah.
Well, that has actually, it goes so quickly. That's our 15 minutes. But I know, but thank you so much. Well, I might just finish off with a question as an artist, as someone who's worked in the arts, who's taught arts. Why do you think, perhaps now more than ever, art matters and art's important?
Yeah, I saw a great post about this where it was like, imagine if, I mean, I'm sure lots of people have seen it, but imagine social isolation without the arts, you know, without music, without books, without artwork, without poetry, without all, you know, movies, everything that we kind of rely on to fill the emotional need in us often is from an art space. And for me, it's my language. It's how I interpret the world and how I put myself out there. It's like a language, it's a therapy. And I think it's also just something that can be shared across cultures. It doesn't have boundaries. You don't need the same language because we all speak the language of art. And it's a bit twee, but I think it's true. Like we can all look at a picture no matter where we are, and we can all feel something from it or learn something or share or give or take, you know. So I like art.
Yeah. No, I like that. It's a salve for the soul. And I think, and that's just so important at the moment. So thank you. Well,
thank you, Danielle.
Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to those that have watched along. I hope you've enjoyed your reprieve from the day and you can go back to your normal life. We'll see you same time next week. Thanks again.
Bye.
Okay. Bye.